Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beirut, Lebanon.
Thousands of men and women go missing without a trace. Thousands of families left without answers. This month, 20 years will have passed since the Lebanese civil war finally ended. Beirut has sprung back to life. But on the issue of the disappeared, it's as if time has stood still. When so many other post-conflict states have faced their demons, why is justice so elusive in Lebanon? And why is the evidence about a distant past still considered so potentially explosive? A union of two people and of two religions. One Shia Muslim, one Druze. Just two of the 18 official religious sects which make up Lebanon's diverse population. For a country historically beleaguered by sectarian conflict, this is a rare symbol of hope, of trust rebuilding in a new generation. But reminders persist of what such diversity can bring, one of the most protracted wars of the 20th century.
This is my son. It's been 34 years since he disappeared. He was kidnapped in Tripoli. His name is Rashid Muhammad Ali Ladawi.
This is my son. I searched all over Beirut for him, trying to find out whether he was killed or if they had taken him, but I couldn't find him.
Here's my son at the age when he was taken away.
He was kidnapped in 1976. He was a student in school. He only left the house to buy cigarettes, and he never came back. Only God knows. I don't know what happened to him.
Wadad Halawani and Ghazi A'ad have taken the lead in rallying families of those who disappeared during the civil war into an organized lobby group. In April 2005, they established this permanent sit-in at the UN headquarters in Beirut, aimed at raising the profile of this cause to a national level. Do you live here now?
Yes, now I sleep here.
And for how many years?
We've been here 6 years now. Well, because of our children. We want our children back. Even if they are just bones, we want them back. We want to bury them.
This small group of people huddled in this permanent vigil are represented by activists like Wadad, and all of them want to find out what happened to their relatives who went missing in Lebanon's civil war. But 20 years on from that war, why is it that people like them still have no answers? In fact, as many as 17,000 people may have disappeared in the civil war. It started in 1975 and was actually a series of conflicts which drew in Palestinian and Lebanese armed sects, the Lebanese army, Syria, Israel, and ultimately Lebanese civilians. The spark was a Christian militia attack against Palestinians. And that ignited a prolonged feud between the many Lebanese sects. Civilians, armed or not, were caught in the crossfire. There were also massacres. As well as around 200,000 killed, many others from a cross-section of Lebanese society simply disappeared.
All we're doing is asking the authorities to admit that we have the right to know what happened to our loved ones and to work on setting up a mechanism to find out what did happen.
But what is immediately noticeable about their protest is that it happens largely out of sight of Beiruti society, in a part of the city which has almost no passers-by. 5 years on, and their most basic questions are yet to be answered, not least a reliable official figure for how many are still missing. But despite such scant progress, relatives continue to come to the tent. Many cling to the hope that their loved ones are alive in the prisons of Syria or Israel. It is less a protest and more a pilgrimage.
Some of them have had lots of anxiety and now are into the hope. So they go through these stages because the truth is not known and they don't know which position to take, the hopeful one, the angry one, the guilty one, or the resignation one.
When Lebanese leaders signed the Taif Accords in 1989, ending the war a year later, they agreed to disarm their militia and share power.
The Taif Agreement was something that forced Lebanese to sit together and stop fighting. But there was no vision for the future. And how do we address the civil war? Do we speak of it or we keep silent and it's as if nothing happened?
A fractured Lebanese state chose to keep silent. For the sake of national reconciliation, a post-war government swept the notion of justice for war crimes under the carpet, favoring the idea that it had purely been a war of others.
There is a kind of denial. I mean, we never did anything wrong. We were defending ourselves. They attacked us. We are the Lebanese on Lebanese soil. We never did anything wrong, and it's a mistake of others.
Amnesty law is something Lebanon had to do to put an end to civil war and start afresh a normalized, pacified life. At that point, it was felt that we had to decide collectively to forget the past.
Critics say the state adopted an official amnesia, which not only left the guilty walking the streets, but also the corridors of power. A year after the war's end, the state passed an amnesty law protecting all leaders from prosecution for war crimes.
Basically, our case hasn't been solved because the people responsible for the war, who gave the orders to kill and kidnap and destroy and stop people because of their identity, just swapped their militia uniforms for business suits and became government officials.
You need to correct the things that you need. You need to admit that 200,000 Lebanese dead did not die like that, did not commit suicide. I mean, somebody somewhere killed someone. Each one is living an amnesia of what he did, not what the other did.
So it's a kind of partial truth that people want to believe in?
Yes, if you like. We did not forgive, and we are not ready to forget what the other did. But we are trying to forget what we did.
The mission of NGO Umam, or Nations, is to tackle Lebanon's issues of civil violence and memory. This means doing the groundwork you'd normally expect of a state-led investigation. They are currently the relatives' best hope.
We are trying to collect first traces which could be used to make a kind of objective assessment which could help eventually to identify a missing person in case of morbid finding, in case some bodies are found either by chance or perhaps one day if a decision is taken to really dig. Like all societies which went through wars, we need to take our time in a way to digest this war so that it becomes part of our past. Unfortunately, the war today is still part of our present, and as I see it, it's still part of our near future.
And Wadad herself is both plagued and driven on by the memory of one day in 1982, midway through the war. It was the last time she saw her own husband.
Well, I still can't forget a single detail of that day, like the faces of the two gunmen who came to the house and took Adnan. Their exact facial features even, and I'll never forget them saying it would only be a 5-minute investigation. I believed them, and I believed Adnan when he told me not to be scared and that he'd be back. And I'll never forget lying in bed that night, and by 1 a.m., when Adnan had been gone for 12 hours, realizing that he wasn't coming back. Nor will I ever be able to forget how much I cried.
The irony is, 10 years ago, the Lebanese government did set up a national commission to investigate the issue of the missing. So, what went wrong? Lebanon's impulse to gloss over traces of the civil war institutionalized by the amnesty law was eventually reflected in the makeover given to the war's epicenter, central Beirut.
I've been to many countries in times of conflict, and I've never seen anything like Lebanon. There is a mass killing on Monday, and then on Wednesday life is normal and people are rebuilding their destroyed houses.
It's as if it never happened, as if we didn't kidnap each other, and as if we didn't slaughter each other. And after everything we went through, we say Lebanon's doing great, with its new buildings and developed infrastructure.
It's a city big enough to hide someone, as proven by the infamous hostage takers of the Civil War era. But almost 80 times smaller than London, surely not big enough for thousands to have vanished without a trace. Downtown Beirut epitomizes how this country has tried to wipe away its recent past. It's as though war has never taken place in this country. It's full of brand new buildings, construction sites, fashionable people, and shops with brand names. It's as though this country has tried to wipe away any vestige that has lived through a period of destruction and upheaval.
Obviously, the so-called reconstruction of Beirut was partly an undertaking to destroy all these criminal traces. Not to talk about the downtown, where for sure there was suspicious spots, let's say, which could have contained dead bodies.
Post-war Beirut, however good-looking, may well be a city built on buried evidence.
We need the archives of all those who worked in the reconstruction of Beirut, if they kept any archives. Otherwise, we don't have any proof, but we can assume that this part of Lebanon also contained mass graves.
The only way to know for sure is to gather testimony about potential grave sites, quarantine those sites, and for forensic experts to exhume and examine any human remains. A process which almost all other conflict zones of the 20th century underwent. Chechnya, Rwanda, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, all pushed through investigations of war crimes within just 2 years of a ceasefire. But in Lebanon, it took 10 years before the government finally bowed to pressure and set up a national commission in 2000, headed by this man, retired Army General Salim Abu Ismail. In a milestone for the relatives of the missing, it named 4 locations as definite sites of civil war mass graves. So with that, this place is in East Beirut, yes?
Yes, we're in Ashrafiyah, part of East Beirut. And this church here is the Orthodox Church of Mar Meter. And the official commission said that this was the site of a mass grave. But the problem is the report doesn't specify the exact place. That's why we turned to the courts and filed 2 lawsuits. First, to obtain official documents detailing the exact place, and in order to quarantine the site because this is a crime scene that no one should touch until we get a specialized commission that will adhere to proper standards. Then they need to start digging so that eventually we'll find out who was buried here.
This is the official report produced by the 2000 Commission into the thousands of Lebanese missing during the Civil War. It's only 2.5 pages long, and in it, it says that none of the specimens from the mass graves were identifiable and that all of the missing should now actually be officially registered as being dead. It falls far short of the comprehensive investigation called for by the relatives and the activists. And what's more, 2 further commissions by the government failed to produce any report at all.
First, the commission downplayed in a very arbitrarily way the number of persons who are considered as disappeared. Second, it mentioned some mass graves, but didn't advise or recommend to take any action in order to dig these mass graves, or at least to protect these sites and to see what they could contain. Third, it tried to get rid of the issue by saying that there is no proof that any one of the missing person is still alive. Very bluntly, I will say that this commission was another attempt to close the file of the disappeared person. They did their best. Unfortunately for them, they failed.
The forensics unit at St. Joseph University, just a few streets away from this mass grave site. It's the lab charged by the government with the task of discreetly analysing human remains.
I'm cutting this area, and after I will remove this piece. And so here we can have the cells, so we can take the cells from here and do the DNA extraction.
When the quality of evidence can make or break the identification process, the consequence of the state's denial finally became clear. The delay in the official investigation has proven critical to getting results. It's 20 years since the Civil War ended. Does that time difference make an impact on the extent that you're able to identify?
Yes, sure, because there is some enzymes that can break down the DNA. So it is difficult when you have an old sample to have a DNA profile, but still we can do it, but it's more difficult.
So does that mean that the chances now of actually identifying evidence from that kind of period is less?
Yes, sure.
Definite truth is important, and the recovery of the body is that makes it easier. Maybe it makes it more real. Maybe we're sure. Maybe we can connect, you know, with the dead person.
A short drive out of sight of the tourists, and we are a world away from pristine and carefree downtown. Here, the scars of war are still worn by the buildings never replaced and in the minds of the residents. It's the area from which Wadad's husband was abducted and for some years, one of the most dangerous strips of land in the world. The road behind me was part of the Green Line during the Civil War, and whilst the formal checkpoints and barricades have disappeared, there are other divisions that have remained from that period, and they run through this city. The mayhem of Lebanon's war was magnified for those who happened to be living along the Green Line. A 9-kilometer strip of barricades designed to block enemy infiltration, it splits Beirut into two. Peacetime Beirut ever since, a patchwork of sectarian enclaves, communities segregated.
Some of them were very scared and they moved out. Some of them were brave, and the third were just fatalistic. You know, whatever happens, happens.
These same coping mechanisms seem to apply more broadly to everyone here, forced to contend with a volatile homeland and threats from others. Put together, downtown's repressed memories and the old Green Line's fractured neighborhoods provide a microcosm of the wider Lebanon. And beneath both Lebanon's sectarian loyalties and differences which fueled the civil war, still an open wound.
You call it whatever you like. It's a different name for the tribe, but it's still the tribal system.
Loyalty to one's community comes first over loyalty to the nation, to the common good of the nation. Communities are becoming monolithic blocks.
People recognize this group is an enemy, for example, and they don't want to live close to them.
The legacy of the war may be more acute for those with missing relatives. But they aren't the only ones left with unresolved trauma. Many of Lebanon's communities are reliving wartime anxieties, the country returning to a now habitual crisis of trust. Lebanon's National Army Day, a show of strength, a picture of unity. It's a scene which belies the fault lines that remain untouched, some say worse, since the Civil War. Despite a government today which brings in all the main religious sects, many citizens still see reconciliation as a failed venture.
The country is split into two, and now the Sunnis are on a side, the Shia are on another side, and the other of the country is either here or there. So the division is not anymore Christians, Muslims.
Rita Aoun and her family are loyal to the Lebanese forces, once a key civil war militia, now a Christian political party.
Since the war, the Lebanese forces had always defended the Christian society. So we joined this party, and we are convinced with all its notions, because they never changed their convictions and words.
In the country's new Sunni-Shia divide, this party has sided with the Sunnis, while the Christian left has aligned with the Shia. So in 2008, when Shia Hezbollah fighters were among those who took to the streets during a political crisis, historic enemies, the Lebanese forces saw this as a red flag.
Honestly, we are afraid since the events of May 7th, because it shouldn't happen. Those arms should be directed towards Israel, not us. I was sincerely scared.
Their daughter, Rageh, is 19, studying languages and hopes to be a translator. She and her friends are of a generation which never saw the war, but was nevertheless raised in a climate of suspicion. This mental divide has stopped her from ever entering Beirut's southern suburbs, Hezbollah's heartland.
They used to tell me it's a very dangerous area, especially for us. I don't know what's there or how to get there. I feel that I would be lost. And I'm afraid to ask because I think that I might get kidnapped or something bad will happen to me. It's not safe, that's what I know.
Today's visit is Rageh's first, and although her parents have tried not to colour her views, it's clear that this trip is about a lot more than crossing any physical distance.
It's not really different from what I expected. It's similar to our region, but there are a lot of pictures representing a different political party to ours. So basically, I'm not afraid, but I just don't belong here. That's all.
But the siege mentality of this family and many others isn't just about sectarian crises. Talking to the Aouns, you realize just how many Lebanese families are affected by the issue of the missing, and how this is silently helping to feed sectarian enmities.
Maybe I feel this way because we have a relative who was kidnapped. My brother was 17 years old and on his way from the village to Beirut. There were lots of militia groups out on the road, and one of them took him. When you see your family in danger and you couldn't leave to another country, then you are going to take a gun and go down to the battlefield. No one will force you to do so, but from my part, I went down and did what my conscience told me to do. I don't regret anything. If things happened like before, yes, I feel that I would do the same thing.
As a senior intelligence officer, while the Lebanese forces were still a militia and the group considered responsible for the Sabra and Shatila atrocity, As'ad Shaftari saw firsthand where mistrust can take a whole community.
Well, two things made me go into the war. The first thing was the feeling that we will be as Christian overthrown by the Muslims and the Palestinians. So it was the fear and survival, if you like. And the second thing was that Lebanon, the Occidental Lebanon, the Christian Lebanon, Lebanon the way I wanted it to be, was in danger.
As'ad was just an engineering student when he joined the fighting. Now, a voice of repentance, he's deeply concerned by Lebanon's lack of progress on reconciling communities.
What I'm hearing from young people is very, very dangerous. 2 weeks ago, I was meeting with a group of young people, and there was one fanatic Christian. He wanted to defend Lebanon. He wanted to defend Christianity, but he was lovable. I mean, he's a nice guy. I told them, I see in him myself. This is how I was. This is how I was, and I went and bought a gun.
And he lays the blame on sectarian leaders for faking peace. Though it's now 20 years since the civil war guns fell silent, there are more recent signs that some sects still see armed conflict as an option. Even since the latest round of reconciliation 2 years ago, there have been 2 political assassinations and several fatal gun battles. Clues to communities still polarized, factions still weaponized, and mistrust endemic. Despite the PR of peacemaking and the will to forget, the legacy of the civil war just keeps returning, because the human trauma was never seriously tended to.
I think that unwillingly the dead are knocking at our doors. A lot of time while digging to build up a building, there is mass graves which are found.
Last year, a body discovered in the northern Beqa Valley was identified as that of British journalist Alec Collett, missing since he was kidnapped in 1985 by Palestinian group Abu Nidal, indicating the state investigation of 2000 was less than exhaustive in recovering remains.
When the body of this British journalist Alec Collett was found, it seemed that another body was found, but unfortunately it was reburied, and this is one of the biggest scandals.
But it also proved identification of civil war victims is still possible, a glimmer of hope for Wadad and the others that their lobbying could one day bear fruit.
If the political will was there, we could easily gather information from the government archives, the militias, and from fighters who are still alive.
And eyewitness testimony is within reach from ex-militiamen like As'ad Shaftari.
At the end of the camp of quarantine, I mean, after it was invaded, I saw two bodies. Then I cannot describe them. I cannot describe what I saw. But one of them was a lady, another one was a guy. But apparently he was a soldier because he had military boots in his feet. This I remember.
The state's neglect of sources like this is for Wadad proof of its tokenistic approach to the whole case. She personally supplied Shaftari's contact details to the 2000 commission, but to no avail. One of the relatives that you work with told us that she gave your details to the official commission. And did you hear anything?
Nobody from any commission ever entered in contact with me for that purpose, no.
Even the man in charge, Salim Abu Ismail, has since revealed that the inquiry he led lacked the will to provide any real outcome.
I believe that this issue should not be tackled. What is the use of digging for thousands of bones in these places and irritate people's feelings again?
وهل قمتم بإعداد ما يشبه خريطة لمواضع هذه المقابر الجماعية؟
Actually, there are no maps.
Until now, because using historical accounts of the conflict, Umam are in the process of mapping potential sites to exhume across the country.
We can confidently say that all cemeteries in Lebanon, and specifically in Beirut, are likely to house small or large mass graves. Second, there is a lot of places which were known during the war to be dumps in where militia used to throw away bodies from both sides. There is a third category of mass graves which belong to very specific battles. Looking for the mass graves, it's not a James Bond issue.
Do you think we're in a situation where you can say now that it's case closed?
No, there is sure a lot and more sites to be explored. The sites should be quarantined, and I don't know if they are doing this or not, because I told you it's not a part of our job, but sure it has to be quarantined.
The government doesn't currently have any sites quarantined, even though Umam already have a figure of 38 locations, far beyond the 4 listed in the National Commission. Sites where vital evidence lies unprotected from contamination or even tampering. And opportunities for at least some of the missing to be given a proper burial.
I used to tell the other relatives I'm hopeful he'll be back and knock on the door one day. But it's been 28 years, so really, if Adnan wasn't killed straight away, well, he probably would have died by now. But when there was an Israeli prisoner exchange recently, I found myself searching through the names for him. And I think I did this because there's no body. no grave, so no matter how rational I try to be, it's impossible.
I challenge any new commission to do more than what we did.
But it's difficult to imagine a commission doing less. During the post-war revival of this country, a golden opportunity was missed. To reimagine Lebanon as one nation, rather than a collection of 18 vying religious groups. And peace accords, instead of starting afresh, simply redrew the lines of sectarian power and influence of the confessional system, where the top positions in the country are given to representatives of certain sects. For those suffering the consequences, past and present, this has been a costly mistake. And now the question is, what next for Lebanon? Since 2008, calls to break up Lebanon's confessional system have been getting louder and louder. From people who believe that the best way of averting conflict in Lebanon is not by taking on sectarian leaders, but by creating enough space in the system for secularism. So, is secularism a viable alternative? Civil groups believe that if the government honored its commitment to separate religion, state, and citizenship, rifts could be mended. One way to do this, they say, is intermarriage between religious sects as part of a package of secular reforms.
We hope that we're going to have civil marriages. That would help crossing between religions. I might sound as a heretic for many religious groups, but that's definitely, as we know, of an advanced level of human communication.
As it stands, marriage outside of one's religious institutions is forbidden, and only those performed abroad are recognized. This has led to demand for an unusual package deal: civil marriage holidays.
We started off here in Beirut, went to a travel agent, booked the whole package, flew. Cyprus is only about 15-20 minutes away, so it was pretty quick.
Rana is Druze and Ramzi is Shia Muslim, communities which have seen frequent hostilities. Unable to marry across the religious divide at home in Lebanon, today they are celebrating their recent civil marriage getaway with friends and family.
This is not a religious marriage. It's family, friends. It's a spiritual marriage. It's the unification of two people that are in love right now with no boundaries or no obligations towards any priest or any sheikh or anything like that. And we've come ourselves to do it, and we're happy and proud.
It should be legalized, and I think in the future it's going to be legalized because you see more and more people going away to get married.
In my opinion, I also think it might help in the long term with everything in this country, from government to the negativity that we have going on here in this country between religions and between areas and between neighborhoods and between regions. I think the more of this that happens, I think, you know, the brighter the future will be in this country.
But because of the Lebanese union of religion and politics, civil marriage is taken as a hostile move against both.
Frequently when we submit laws to the parliament, we wonder about how the religious groups are going to think about it. Fine, they're not having a veto, frankly, but they have lots of power.
In fact, the idea of secularizing Lebanon's politics has been postponed ever since it was enshrined in Article 95 of the Constitution 84 years ago. Beneath this story lies the denial and neglect of a political elite, unwilling to resolve its biggest crises at anything deeper than surface level. to address the way a sectarian basis for statehood really keeps the Lebanese apart, or to face accountability for crimes committed in the name of religion.
They are afraid that, supposing that they dig here, they find 500 Muslims. That means that the Christians killed 500 Muslims. And if in parallel they dig somewhere else and find 30 bodies, that means that the Muslims killed 30 bodies. So that makes 500 to 30. They are afraid that this will cause problems and that people or parties or groups or communities will be accused, and this might revive some hatred or some problems, you see.
But those who say that digging up the past, trying to find those graves, whether they're in Muslim areas or Christian areas, will have that effect of being a spark for a new conflict. They're right, aren't they?
Yes, maybe. But don't we owe it to these guys, to these families, to tell them the truth about their beloved? When will we tell them the truth? After they die? I think that this is what the government has in mind to do. I mean, wait 20 years more, and everybody of their relatives, or direct relatives, would have died, and that's it. Everybody is sorry for what we did to your relatives. Come together, Mary and Fatima, come together, cry together, pray together for your children in front of the same monument. This is what a normal nation would have done.
Some of us have attempted, I wasn't a minister at that time, to create something similar to South African or Moroccan National Commission for Truth and Reconciliation, but the response wasn't good, I think. They would say, you know, the classic, they would say, oh, it's good for the others. Here it's so complicated. And I would be pleased to see a process, even if we don't get everything at once, but have a credible process.
These are voices which may yet be given a hearing if Lebanon ever does decide to grapple with the facts about the war. Until that time, the constant struggle takes its toll on the families.
I don't know. A lot of things have changed in my life. We used to share responsibilities, like taking care of the children, especially when they were small. We were true partners, lovers. We'd only been married 8 years. It guarantees to change you. And then there's all the official lies, the constant searching for him, and the way the case becomes your life.
If the official probe is, for now, at a dead end, it's realistically likely to stay that way unless accountability is removed from the equation. The only solution likely to be tolerated by the current regime is a partial one, for victims to be brought home without ever knowing who was responsible for their disappearance. Regardless of the sacrifice of justice that would mean for so many families.
Realistically, I don't see in the short or mid-term any other solution. We have to content ourselves by a kind of moral condemnation of the perpetrators, but for sure it's much more urgent to look for these human remainings. This would put us on the path of integrating the idea of accountability in our political culture.
Truth is always the first casualty of war, and in Lebanon, it may be that we never find out who was responsible for the disappearances and killings during the civil war. And that's because political leaders in this country have elevated their sectarian interests above the interests of the country and of justice. And as long as that continues to happen, it's hard to see how Lebanon will have a peaceful future.